The Little Bighorn Battlefield. On this day, June 25, 1876, 149 years ago, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer met his end at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, a pivotal and controversial moment in U.S. history. Custer and over 220 of his men from the 7th Cavalry were killed by a coalition of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors near the Little Bighorn River in what is now southeastern Montana. The Little Bighorn Battlefield is located approximately an hour from Billings, Montana, which is home to one of the state's major airports. It's not just tucked away in history, it's part of the landscape. The drive from Billings, Montana takes about an hour, cutting through the vast open land of the Crow Reservation. There are no hotels, no restaurants, just prairie stretching in every direction, as if the land itself wants silence. Reflections on Little Bighorn. Visiting the Little Bighorn Battlefield reminds me that history is something we feel, not just read. It's not a tourist stop, it's sacred ground. The memorials at Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument represent a powerful dual narrative, honoring both the U.S. soldiers and the Native American warriors who fought and died there in 1876. The original 1881 monument atop Last Stand Hill commemorates the fallen soldiers of the 7th Cavalry, including Custer and his men, many of whom are buried in a mass grave beneath it. The main memorial atop Last Stand Hill, erected in 1881, includes the names of officers and some enlisted men of the 7th Cavalry who died in the battle. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer received a slightly deeper grave, but even his was only about 18 inches deep. In 1881, the U.S. War Department erected a granite memorial on Last Stand Hill. Around its base, the remains of many soldiers and personnel were later reinterred in a mass grave. Custer's remains were exhumed in 1877 and reburied at West Point, New York. Custer's gravestone is the black one. Together, these memorials reflect a more complete and inclusive remembrance, one that acknowledges both the tragedy and the courage on all sides. It's a place where history speaks in many voices. In 2003, with the dedication of the Indian Memorial, a circular earthwork, featuring metal silhouettes of Native warriors and a symbolic spirit gate, its theme, Peace Through Unity, honors the Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Crow, and Arikara, who fought to defend their families and way of life. It's the only federally funded memorial dedicated explicitly to Native American participants in a U.S. battlefield. Over time, more than 220 white marble markers were placed across the battlefield to indicate where each soldier fell, creating the solemn landscape visitors see today. After the Battle of the Little Bighorn in June 1876, the dead were initially buried where they fell. Survivors of the 7th U.S. Cavalry, under Major Marcus Reno, hastily dug shallow graves using limited tools off and marking them with teepee poles from the abandoned native village. Calhoun Hill was the site of one of the earliest and most intense clashes during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. It's where Company L, led by Lieutenant James Calhoun, Custer's brother-in-law, made a desperate stand against a fierce assault by Lakota and Cheyenne warriors, including leaders like Gall, Crow King, and Two Moons. The soldiers formed a skirmish line near the crest of the hill, but they were quickly overwhelmed. According to legend, the men and their empty cartridge shells were found in a semicircle, suggesting they fought to the last round. Calhoun and Lieutenant John Crittenden were both killed there. The brown or reddish granite headstones were for Native American scouts who served with the U.S. Army, often Arikara, Crow, or other tribal members who had allied with the 7th Cavalry. These men played key roles as guides and interpreters, and some lost their lives during the battle. They are engraved with names and, when known, tribal affiliations. They were placed later as a gesture of recognition and respect, often near the Reno-Benteen area or along the trails they traveled. The Little Bighorn Battlefield is one of the most emotionally charged historic sites in the American West. Located near Crow Agency, Montana, it preserves the ground where on June 25-26, 1876, Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors clashed with the 7th U.S. Cavalry under Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. Today, the site is known as Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument, and it tells a story from both sides. Battlefield art. Custer and Sitting Bull were two towering figures on opposite sides of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. each representing a different vision of America's future. Their clash wasn't just a military one, it was symbolic. Custer embodied the concept of westward expansion and the ideology of manifest destiny. Sitting Bull stood for sovereignty, tradition, and resistance. Their legacies still echo, Custer as a controversial figure of boldness and hubris, and Sitting Bull as a symbol of native resilience and dignity. When people walk the Little Bighorn Battlefield, they often do so with a quiet reverence. Many pause at Last Stand Hill, reading the names etched in stone, imagining the chaos that once unfolded on that now silent ridge. Some visitors tie prayer cloths to trees near the Indian Memorial, a tradition rooted in native spirituality. Others leave small tokens, stones, feathers, or notes, at markers that moved them. The Indian Memorial, with its circular design and spirit gate, invites reflection on unity and loss from all sides of the conflict. Custer National Cemetery is nestled within the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument in Montana. It's not just a resting place for those who died in the 1876 battle, it's a chronicle of American military service across generations. One of the most poignant aspects is how it reflects the principle that in death, all rest is equals. Generals lie beside privates, and Native American scouts are honored alongside cavalrymen. Originally established to bury the fallen from the Battle of the Little Bighorn, the cemetery expanded to include veterans from every major U.S. conflict, from the Indian Wars to Vietnam. You'll find graves of Medal of Honor recipients, frontier scouts, Buffalo soldiers, and even military family members, all resting side by side, regardless of rank or background. Comanche was a mixed-breed cavalry horse who became a legend for surviving the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876, one of the most infamous clashes between the U.S. Army and Native American forces. He belonged to Captain Miles Keogh of the 7th Cavalry and was known for his bravery even before the battle. In fact, he got his name after being wounded in a skirmish with Comanche warriors in 1868 and continuing to carry Keogh through the fight. At Little Bighorn, Comanche was found 2 days after the battle, badly wounded but alive, near the body of his fallen rider. Multiple bullets and arrows had hit him, but he somehow survived. The Army treated him as a living symbol of the tragedy and resilience of that day. Comanche was retired with honors, never ridden again, given a special stall, and even paraded at military ceremonies draped in black. When he died in 1890, he received a military funeral, one of only 2 horses in U.S. history to be so honored. His preserved body is still on display at the University of Kansas Natural History Museum. They're descendants of Spanish Mustangs, characterized by distinctive features such as dorsal stripes and zebra-like leg markings. Native Americans or early settlers released some, and they've lived wild for generations. While they graze on the battlefield grounds, those are protected and managed. They're like living ghosts of the frontier. I ran into one of the most iconic herds of wild horses in the American West. These horses roam the Pryor Mountain Wild Horse Range, which overlaps with parts of the Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area. They're descendants of Spanish Mustangs, characterized by distinctive features such as dorsal stripes and zebra-like leg markings. Native Americans or early settlers released some, and they've lived wild for generations. While they graze on the battlefield grounds, those are protected and managed. My bags will be packed next year because I'll be going to the 150th anniversary.